Back in the office today, but a week ago I was down in Marathon fishing a mahi tournament. I believe it's called a Bulls and Cow. It had over 100 boats in it. We had a tough day, caught a bunch of little mahi, but not any big ones. On the second day, Jay caught a African Pompano, like a 23-pounder, very good one. And here's Captain Macko showing us how he fillets an African Pompano. I had no idea these things were that difficult to fillet, but he did an awesome job. Check it out.
Now these guys are a pain in the clean. Beep, 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 beep. Pain in the butt. Very hard fish to clean. Very hard to get the skin off these fillets. Fun to catch, a nightmare to clean. So basically same process, rib cages. Now their meat runs right to the top of their head. You know, a lot of people make these cuts here. Well, you just missed a whole chunk of meat right here. And this is a prize fish. It's something you don't want to leave any meat on this fish. Okay, same thing. Then I'm just going to roll the knife, find the backbone. And that's going to allow me to stay straight on this fish. They have this armor that runs the whole edge of this fish right here. That's why you see my cut in front of here. That's not meat, it's all hard. And you can see how I'm kind of rolling the knife right around that hard bone right here. You can see the ridges. Right through his tail. Same thing on the other side. Okay. Find that backbone again. Run it through. Okay, now I'm just gonna kind of work that meat right off this fish as carefully as I possibly can. Not the easiest fish to fillet. These guys also have a rib cage as well that you can still roll your knife up and get rid of that rib cage. But sometimes on these fish, I like to leave the rib cage. That way I know I'm getting all the meat. And sometimes I'll leave it on. It all depends. All depends how my cut is. Okay, I'm slowly just gonna work that knife right on that bone. And you see his ribs right here. And we just work that meat right off the ribs. There you go. You got a nice, clean African Pompano fillet. We got all the meat off this fish, all the way to the top of the head. That's how this fish should look when you're done. Do the same thing on the other side.
What do you compare the meat to?
Oh, this is such a hard fish to compare to another fish. This fish is in its own category, honestly. It's part of the Pompano family. You know, it's kind of like a permit, but the quality of this meat is much better than a permit. You know, this fish you can eat raw. That's how good this fish is. It's got its own taste. And it's really a good fish that you can cook any way you really like to eat fish, on top of eating it raw. Nice fillet. Poke the eyes. That way when the fish rots, his eyes will actually blow up and turn into balloons. Then you got a floating carcass on the surface of the water. So you always pop the eyes so nobody's got to smell your nasty fish in the ocean. And then then the toughest part of this fish.
I'm taking both. You want me to?
No, I'm taking one of them, you fucker.
So usually what I do
Offering one to you.
is on these, instead of running through the whole fillet to get the whole skin off.
Again.
Okay.
Jay was interrupting me.
No, you're good. So we're gonna go ahead and get the skin off this, which is the hardest part of filleting this fish. So what I started doing with this, instead of running the knife all the way down, you know, because I do tend to miss some skin up here on the top of the fillet and the backside. You know, I'll miss a strip. So what I started doing, just to kind of minimize that, is instead of skinning it right off the bat, I go ahead and trim the bones on this first, just to be done with it. That way I get a smaller fillet to work with my knife, and I get a little more precise with it. So I'll keep the skin on, kind of do the same thing here, run right along his edge. Nice sharp knife can usually make 1 or 2 cuts and you got that fillet done. Okay, so now it makes it a little easier for me to skin.
What's the regulation on this?
These got to be 24 to the fork, I believe. Might want to get that right.
Can you look that up?
Doesn't matter
20
when it's 23 pounds.
I know.
It's either 22 or 24.
This is just informative.
Yeah, might want to get that correct. So now what I'm doing here, the skin is very soft. There is nothing to this skin. It's not tough. You can almost rip it with your hands. So that's why it's tough to get the skin off these fillets. You tend to leave some on. But you know, since I started cutting down that center right off the bat, I'm able to get these pretty clean first time. Right there, good. And that's an African Pompano fillet ready to eat. High quality fish right there.
Just the belly part.
This is the belly part. Good. And since we made our good cuts on the fish, we don't have to do any trimming with bones out of this. It's ready to go. And you can also minimize your cuts too by just how you fillet that fish, leaving the bones inside that carcass when you're done, so you don't got to cut them off your meat, because you will lose some meat if you do that. So let's go ahead and trim. Okay.
24 to the fork.
24. Cool.
Just talk me through it again.
All right, so we're going right back on this fillet again. We're gonna get this skin off, okay? So I ran right down the center. I got that bone line out, shrunk my fillet up just enough to make it easier getting that skin off that fillet, so I don't have to work with the fillet this wide. I can just work with the fillet this wide. And because if you leave the skin on these fillets, sometimes it's tough to have to go back and get it trimmed off, because then you're cutting into the good meat, and it becomes a pain sometimes. And also what I like to do on these fish that have a real fair skin is I almost like the knife just above, and you're almost leaving a little bit of meat on the skin. Not much, it's real thin, but if you keep that angle up just enough to keep a little bit of meat on this, you know when you flip that over, there's gonna be no skin on there. It's gonna be clean. Not all fish you have to do that. Most fish are pretty tough skin, so you can just zip right through it. These are real soft.
Here, put that one separate.
Yep.
How are you gonna cook that, Jay?
I haven't decided. I'll probably cook it a couple different ways.
Okay, I'm gonna fillet my other bones off the other side of the belly here. Okay, and also by cutting out that center piece there, you're also getting rid of some of that bloodline, which you definitely don't want to have on your fish. It becomes a little gamey. Okay, I'm gonna have that angle of that knife just up a little bit. Just enough to where I'm not leaving a lot of meat on the fillet, but I'm also not leaving the skin on the fillet. And that's clean. I always run my hand down the fillet because a lot of people will not eat the fish if there's a bone in it, or they eat the bone. It completely discourages them. It's like getting a hair in your food. So I always try to make sure that I get every bone out of every single fillet, because that can ruin somebody's taste for eating fish very quickly.